And for those of you just joining us, we're just giving folks a little more time to join. And in the meanwhile, if you have any questions for the Q&A session at the beginning of this training, you can go ahead and chat those into us, or you can raise your hand if you are bold. What am I missing? All right, it looks like we have our first question that just came in. I'll go ahead and just read that one, and whoever can answer it can just unmute themselves and do so. Do we have clarification on when 903 states 8 consecutive hours or 24 cumulative hours? What is the time frame that 24 cumulative hours is over? Like a period of a week, 48 hours? Thank you.
Hey, good morning. This is Greg Duranlo, Environmental Manager. I believe that question is consistent with a question that is in our, the Q&A document, and we are still working on the answer to that question. So I will push that one up to the top of the list, and we will get that answered. So sorry, I don't have an answer right off the top of my head for you.
Thank you, Greg. No other questions right now. All right, well, we still have a Q&A session at the end too, so we'll just go ahead and move on to the new engineering info on the website. Diane McCoy will be presenting there. Just give me a moment to switch over. Diane, do you want to check your sound while I'm doing that?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Awesome. Thank you. Hoping this is yours. Oh, sorry. It wants to play a bunch of games. It must be covered up by Zoom. There it is. Guys, it was hiding behind Zoom. All right, Diane, you may take it away.
All right. Thanks, Hannah. Good morning. My name is Diane McCoy. I'm going to talk about some new Bradenhead data tools. Just go ahead to the next slide. We recently released 2 new tools to our website. One is the ability to search for Bradenhead tests in our database using the search feature. The other is to look for Bradenhead test data from the scout card for individual wells. Next slide. I'll start by going over the Bradenhead search tool. To access this tool, you start by clicking the data link on our website. From there, that part of the database, use the inspection incident search feature, and then you'll toggle on Bradenhead. I highlighted those with the red boxes, what the navigation looks like to get to this feature. Once you're there, you can search for different parameters to narrow down what type of Bradenhead test data you're looking for. For example, you have the ability to search for county, a specific location, well API, by operator, or even by pressure or date ranges. Next slide. Here I'll go over an example of the Bradenhead search tool. First, I selected Bradenhead from the search, then selected county, and next selected a date range. For this example, I'm looking for any Bradenhead test data submitted for the month of December in Weld County of last year. And then also, I increased the record limits just to ensure I get all the available data for this time period. So again, kind of highlighted by those red boxes on this slide of the different search features I used, but you can set up the search to however best suits your needs. Next slide. Here's the screenshot of what that data looks like once the search results have been returned to you. I highlighted the export to Excel button. That's a great feature to make it easier to digest or organize the data. Next slide. Oh, that slide looks really busy. A different way to use the search tool is to search by location. So I wanted to highlight this example in case you were looking for existing wells, Bradenhead pressure in relation to maybe new wells you'd be drilling. So if you wanted to look for existing offset well Bradenhead pressure data, you could enter the, oh, sorry, can you go back, Hannah? Yeah. I just entered the section, township, and range here. For the area I'm interested in, you can see the screen grab of the search tool with red boxes highlighting where I input the data. And next to that is a snippet from our map showing the wells that are in this section. And then at the bottom is a screen grab of the output results from the search tool. So just, I mean, in this case, I'd go ahead and export it to Excel to be able to sort or filter by, you know, pressure, operator, location, whatever it is I'm looking for, but just a way to highlight the search features together of how it can help with reviewing offset well surface casing pressure. Okay, next slide. The other new tool we added was a Bradenhead scout card. So from the top of existing scout cards, which is kind of the snippet here on the top of the slide, there has been a new link added titled Bradenhead. If you click that link, you'll find the new Bradenhead scout card. The scout card displays the summary history of the Bradenhead test data submitted for that well. Bradenhead test data is sorted by the test date. It's kind of hard to see on this slide, sorry about that. The most recent will be at the top. If you're looking to get the complete information from the test, sorry, a squirrel just like ran into my window. That was crazy. The Bradenhead test data is sorted by date. So the top one is the most recent. And then if you want to see the complete history of it, you can click the blue links on the left side. And that's either going to be the doc number from the actual Form 17 submitted, or a link to the bulk upload data if it was submitted via the bulk upload. And you can see the complete entry that was part of that. Next slide, Hannah. And here an example of what the bulk upload display will look like under the new scout card. So it provides the basic well information at the top, including the surface casing setting depth, and then other details that were part of that bulk upload entry. Additionally, there is a chart that shows the pressures or flow characteristics for that 30-minute test. Next slide. That was all I had prepared today, so thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Diane. I think just in the interest of moving things along, we'll just take questions at the end, if that's okay. And I don't see any questions right now anyway, so. All right, moving on. Next we have Diana Byrne, oh, sorry. And let me make you a host real quick so that you can unmute yourself. Awesome. And then Diana, if you have something that you would like to present, just let me know and we'll present it. I'll present it.
Hopefully you have the document.
Sorry.
Or I can go through.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know if I have the document. Can you tell me what it is and what it is?
Operator guidance. Let me pull it across and share my screen.
Okay. Okay, you would like to share your screen? Go ahead and do that. I think you should be able to do it.
we go.
All right, take it away, Diana. Thank you.
Alrighty. This was just to give an expectation of the new piece of Rule 903D that talks to if gas is being basically anything but sold, what the expectation was of notifying the mineral owner. So the rule citation, then the basis and purpose in there about incentivizing the capture and use of natural gas, and then defining that we would expect that that notice is given the same time you would normally send notification of payment for other hydrocarbons. And that's it. If there's any questions, we'll get them at the end. You can notify however you would normally, regular mail, email, other special delivery, and maintain those records for 5 years. So if there's any questions, we'll catch them at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diana. Next up, we have Form 27 guidance clarification. Greg, and I think I also have John Axelson who may step in. So go ahead and take that one away, Greg.
Thanks. Good morning. So I wanted to follow up on a few of the comments that I made last week with respect to actually more than just Form 27, or more specifically than Form 27, but to the facility closure guidance document that we've put out for Rule 911A4. And so I wanted to clarify that most of the comments that I made last week were really related to that final site closure. The rule does allow for consideration of partial, of substantive changes at the site that would require a Form 27 based on the director's determination. So I guess, and also the flow line closure and abandonment rules include partial closures of those facilities if a large facility is registered. And our site permitting rules, with the Form 2A also allow for consideration of sort of significant or substantive changes to a location. So in light of all that, I wanted to make a note that that guidance document beginning on page 6 talks about when a Form 27 would be required if the entire site or facility is not being closed. And if you're not sure, if you're making some changes to your site and you're not sure if a Form 27 would be required or not, please contact the regional environmental protection specialist, talk about the changes that you're going to make, and decide whether the Form 27 is appropriate. John, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Greg, sure. So regarding the timing and requirement to submit the Form 27, I just want to clarify. So that's specifically addressed in Rule 911A4. And I think the way it was written in some regard might be a little bit misleading, but I'm just going to read part of it. It says the oil and gas facility closure pursuant to this Rule 911A will be at the time of final site closure, plugging and abandonment, or decommissioning, unless the director determines that a substantive change to the site requires a Form 27 or reportable spill or an historic impact is discovered during facility operation or removal. And so what we wanted to see is if a well is plugged and abandoned, if a flow line is abandoned, if a facility is decommissioned, the 27 needs to come in for prior approval at the time of facility closure. So what it does not mean is if you have a multi-well pad and you're going to abandon one well out of 6, it doesn't mean you can wait until the entire pad is decommissioned to submit a Form 27 for that well. And the reason behind that is because if there were impacts related to a facility, we don't want those impacts to continue to exist in the environment for potentially years and continue to migrate until the time that the full facility is decommissioned. So, you know, the rule specifically says final site closure, plugging and abandonment, or decommissioning. And there has been a lot of confusion around that. So again, we don't want to kick historic impacts down the road. We want them cleaned up at the time of closure. So hopefully that's clear.
Yeah, and John, I appreciate that. I think part of that confusion was certainly I interjected into the discussion last week, so I apologize for any confusion there. So plugging a well is specifically included as a trigger for a Form 27 in A4. Partial facility closure, though, like on a tank battery, if it's a 12 tank battery and 1 or 2 tanks are removed, could you address that?
Yeah, sure. And so that was why in 911A4 we added the phrase about a substantive change to the site. So if you have a large production facility and you're not going to change the footprint of the facility, doesn't require a Form 2A, say you're going to change out a separator or remove 1 storage tank, that doesn't require a Form 27. But say you were going to add 6 wells to a pad, you were going to decommission the old tank battery and put a new tank battery on the footprint, we would definitely want to see a 27 for something like that. And so that's what the phrase about the substantive change was really meant to address.
Thank you for that, John, and hopefully that does clear some things up. A couple other points of clarification on the same issue with respect to multi-facility closure. I know there's still a strong desire for being able to close multiple sites on a single Form 27. The rules formerly allowed for multiple site closure on a single Form 27, and we kind of called that a blanket Form 27, and it could have been 20 or 40 or 100 partially buried produced water vaults on a single Form 27, and that provision of the rule was removed, and so we are looking at a single site with a single Form 27 now. That said, that doesn't mean that each individual oil and gas facility on an oil and gas location needs its own Form 27. You can combine for a single oil and gas location, if there's a tank battery that you're closing, if there's a partially buried produced water vault, you can combine those, and on location flow lines, you can combine those onto a single Form 27 for that oil and gas location. Again, if in doubt as to how to handle it, contact the regional environmental protection specialist, and they can help you parse those things out or lump them together as appropriate. And we are going to continue to evaluate this over time and make sure that this is working, and make sure that we're working efficiently and effectively to get these Form 27s timely approved, so that we're not causing delays in the field. And if we see places to improve efficiencies, we will make those opportunities. But for the time being, we're going to continue to act in accordance with the guidance that we released. And John, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that covered it, Greg, unless there's questions.
And if there aren't questions, which I don't see any coming in on the on the facility closure guidance. Oh yeah, Dave, I do see your question about publishing monthly stats on approval. So we'll look into that. One other thing I wanted to touch on, and changing gears a little bit, to some facilities that are listed on the Form 2A that have been causing some confusion, and those are the VOC combustors, flares, and enclosed combustion devices. So we, as I've said previously, we are trying to adopt language that is more consistent with what CDPHE Air Pollution Control Division uses. And so they don't use VOC combustors. We would ask that you don't use VOC combustors on the Form 2A anymore either. We will start to classify things as either a flare, which is an open tip combustion device, or an enclosed combustion device. And so that's going to be the distinction that we draw on the Form 2A from now on. And so hopefully that makes more sense and hopefully makes things easier. If your enclosed combustion device is combusting flash gas emissions from a tank, or separator gas emissions, that are shunted over to that emission control device, we're not drawing a distinction there. Our staff can still draw that distinction, and you can as well, sort of manually, but for the purposes of inventorying on the Form 2A, what we really want to see is either flares or enclosed combustion devices. And so we, if we need to, we will ask you for clarification. If there's a discrepancy, if you've got VOC combustors listed on your facility layout drawing, but now you're shifting them over and calling them enclosed combustion devices, we can work that out with you during our review. But we're just going to look for the distinction between an open tip flare and an enclosed combustion device. And hopefully that makes things simpler in the long run. And Hannah, that's all I've got. I do see some questions. So why don't we go to the next topic, and then we'll come back to that question at the end.
Okay, that sounds great. Let me just share my screen real quick. And up next is permitting guidance clarification. Jane will be presenting there, and you should be able to see it. Jane, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jane Stanzik, the permitting manager. So almost just a month ago, oh, I got the wrong date on there, sorry. So last month I went through these permitting scenarios, and since then a number of people have pointed out that that I might have some of that wrong. And sure enough, I did. I got a little overzealous with when an OGDP hearing application is required. So I've revised this guidance, and the revised guidance will be posted, and this old one will be taken down so as to avoid confusion. So next slide, please, Hannah. So I've added this slide to just add to this document the rule for the requirement of an OGDP. And an OGDP is triggered by the need for a Form 2A. And that's where it says that meets the criteria of Rule 304A. Next slide, please, Hannah. This is Rule 304A, and it's essentially the requirements of when a Form 2A is required. Obviously, it's required for a new location. It's required for expanding an existing location or making a significant change to an existing location. Next, or an approved location. Next slide, please, Hannah. This is just the new rules for a Form 2. Next slide. So I'm just going to point out where I've made corrections. I guess it shouldn't say revised, should say corrected. Hannah, did you jump? Is that the next slide? Okay.
Sorry,
so,
I went to it and then it didn't look like I had, so sorry about that.
You're good. So I corrected the general tips. like I said, if a Form 2A is required, an OGDP is required. But if only spacing is required, that does not trigger a Form 2A, then an OGDP is not required. Next slide, please, Hannah. Same correction here. If you have a 2A that was approved and is not expired or the location is built, and you have a pending hearing application and a pending Form 2, that hearing application for spacing is in the hearing process. It will get approved sometime along here. And once it is approved, then you can file a replacement Form 2. Next slide, please, Hannah. The same correction here. If the scenario is you have an approved 2A, you need some new spacing, and you have a pending 2 that didn't get approved, you're going to go ahead and file a spacing application. And when that's approved, then you can file your replacement Form 2. No OGDPs required. Next slide, Hannah. Same correction here. Your 2A is all good to go. You have a pending 2. It was new or refile. Pending, I mean, as prior to January 15th. So this scenario again, the pending 2 was for an old GWA wellbore spacing unit. Those don't exist anymore. You'll need to file a spacing application to get whatever spacing approved you now want instead of an old GWA wellbore spacing unit. And once that's approved, then you'll file your replacement Form 2. Again, no OGDP is required. Next slide, Hannah. Similar revision here, except there's no pending 2. It's just you need to send in a new Form 2 for a well that's already authorized by a 2A. So you just file a spacing application with the hearings group. And once it's approved, you file your new Form 2. Next slide, please, Hannah. Here, all I did was just to help get all the details in an OGDP application. When there is a pending hearing application for just spacing, and it didn't get approved, and your 2A didn't get approved before January 15th, the hearings group wants you to file, or your attorney, to file an OGDP application that simply refers to the pending hearing application for spacing. And in referring to it, you need to include the docket number, just so all the dots get connected. Next slide, please, Hannah. So this scenario is sending in a Form 2 to deepen or re-enter or recomplete or sidetrack an existing well. And if you need some spacing for whatever that Form 2 is going to do, but you don't need a Form 2A, all you need is a spacing hearing application. And once it's approved, then you can file your 2. Next slide, please, Hannah. There were no corrections on this page. Next slide, please, Hannah. And here again, following with what a bunch of the previous corrections were, just spacing does not need an OGDP. I think that's the last slide, Hannah. Is it? Okay, thank you. So I apologize for, as I said, misinterpreting when an OGDP application is required. And I think these corrections straighten that all out, and we'll get this posted and take down the previous version that was incorrect.
Great job.
So
Thanks, Jane. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Thank you, Jane. I think we're just going to take questions at the end right now and keep rolling through, steamrolling even. Up next is John Noto with the Rule 435A1 and 2, OGLA review of Form 6 intents. John, can we just check your sound real quick?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And
Awesome.
you can take it away.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm John Noto. I'm the Oil and Gas Location Assessment Supervisor. Wanted to take a few minutes this morning to introduce to everyone our review of Form 6s, reviewing the Notice of Intent to Abandon Form 6s. And next slide, please, Hannah. In the mission change rules, there are new requirements that pertain to Form 6 abandonments. And I'd say the key part of these rules is the protection and minimization of adverse impacts that we're required to review for public health, safety, welfare, the environment, wildlife resources. And this applies, also points out the oil and gas location is part of that review. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of NOI Form 6s, and we know that this, this has been a fairly high-level review, I'd say, from location assessment aspect, and now we're plunging into this review in addition to other things we're doing along with mission change rules. So we're going to try and be as efficient as we can be. We know there's a high volume of these forms. We know that sometimes there's a timing and other considerations for the operations that need to happen. So we're going to basically evaluate the setting, and that includes the potential receptors, and we're looking for potential adverse impacts. We're evaluating the location and the work that's planned, and trying to just look at Form 6. You do a desktop review and look at where the location is and how many wells, for example, might be abandoned, and type of well. And then we're going to apply any necessary and reasonable mitigation measures. We're going to work with the operator, and through all phases of this, especially if we're in a challenging environment where we might have to apply mitigation measures. Next slide, please. Here's an example of a location that would be a pretty rare one that's in the middle of the neighborhood, and that this is going to result in involvement from the staff with the operator, and we're going to reach out early, and hopefully the operator is also going to communicate with us, being aware that we're evaluating these locations for impacts, and we'll try and get ahead of things if we're in a spot like this. Next slide, please. I think hopefully, and based on my initial review of these, most of the locations are going to be in rural areas. We're going to still need to look at them, but in a lot of cases, we won't have to do anything with the location or with best management practices or conditions of approval. I think the operator can get in, get their work done, and then they can move on, hopefully. Next slide, please. Also, we're, part of our review, understanding that there's a lot of variables and factors. This near neighborhood, if those directional wells versus a single vertical well, or we understand that's going to require more time on the location, more equipment, and potentially more mitigation measures may result from that. Next slide, please. We also, are aware that there are timing and urgent and considerations, how urgent an abandonment might be is going to be a factor in our review. We're looking at wildlife in addition to the other aspects of a location. And in this case, we have an example where we have wells in a winter bald eagle roost area. We would potentially, I'm sure we would pull in Parks and Wildlife folks for their advice and to get an understanding of timing and just how necessary it would be potentially to try and work with the scheduling of this around a timing stipulation or a sensitive time for the bald eagles. Next, please. So I know that we're holding questions till the end, but if you have any, we're glad to answer them. Thank you.
Great job. Thanks, John. And this is the end, so we can just take your question first, or
Great.
I can start at the beginning. I have a secret question that was sent privately. It's not really a secret, but it was just sent privately. So I guess I'll just kick things off by reading that one off first. So on the Form 27s, after submitting a bunch that have been approved, I am suddenly having some return to draft requesting that the Form 43 be put in the related forms tab, even when there is not a Form 43 because no BH sample was taken during the BH test. Is there a reason for this? I don't know if it was answered, I'm sorry. So if that was already answered, then never mind. But if it wasn't, then please answer it.
Yeah, so that sounds like a very specific question. So not necessarily, I think we'd have to look at those instances specifically to understand. So if you want to reach out to me or John Axelson after the meeting, that would be fine.
Okay, I'll send them your email address.
Thank you.
The next question up is, I think you answered the one from Dave.
I'll touch on that a little bit more, Hannah. Just, yeah, we will look into whether or not we can put stats up on the timing there. But, the Form 27 is submitted for multiple different requirements, and some Form 27s will just by their nature take longer to approve than others. And so I'm not sure that, tracking those across the board will provide meaningful data. I think the most important thing is that if operators feel that their work is being delayed by the review and approval of a Form 27, that they reach out to the supervisor or me directly, and let's work through the issue. So staff does not believe that we are going to be putting operators in a position where work is being delayed, waiting on approval of those.
And I might answer the similar question that came in asking for tracking the timing for the approval of the Form 6 Notice of Intent to Abandon with the addition of the OGLA review. Our internal goal will be to approve the Form 6 Notices of Intent in the same time frame that they've been approved historically, which I think is within a week or two. And I would say that, again, the things that impact our turnaround is the complexity of the location, as well as the quality of the form that's submitted. And quite honestly, I would prefer to save staff's time and devote it to getting things done rather than counting how many things were done. So again, if there's an issue, the operators know who to contact to request maybe focus on a particular Form 6 notice of intent to abandon, and they can continue to do that. That's what folks do all the time. So thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Jane. The next question is a clarification question. Just to clarify, we submit one Form 27 for facility decom and related well cut / cap activity. I think that one might be for
Yeah.
oh, no.
Yeah, so excuse me. That sort of example is addressed fairly specifically in the 911A4 guidance. Look at the example that starts on page 10, where we request one Form 27 for the production facility and one Form 27 for the individual sites that have, if you will, remote wells. And usually we look at that as a well and its remote tank battery, but in this case, this sort of central closure is at the tank battery. The remote wells would require a Form 27. We would take the Form 27 for the well cut and cap and include the off-location flow line on that Form 27 that would take, that carried the produced fluids over to the production facility. So for a multi-well pad, we say that one Form 27 could be submitted for multiple wells on a multi-well pad. So if you've got a 12-well pad, you're P&A-ing 2 of them, you could submit a Form 27 for that combined 2-well P&A. If you're plugging all of them, as in the example that John Noto showed on his one of his slides, all 8 of those could be covered on a single Form 27, and that location actually had the production facility on site too, so all of that could be bundled.
Thanks, Greg.
Hey, Greg.
John?
Right.
Yep.
The presentation we made is also posted on the guidance document page, and it had some actual illustrations in the slides that give examples. So folks can refer to that too. It's up on the web page.
It looks like we have some time. Would you like me to navigate there? Just, or no?
Yeah, if you'd like to, you could go
Sure.
to the guidance documents
Let me just
under.
over here. Oops. Here we go. E19-181, the mission change guidance docs, and then it'll be down here, right?
Yeah, they're near the bottom. There should be a facility closure with my name. Looks like 4 from the bottom.
This one?
Yes.
All right.
And scroll right there. So those are some examples. Here's an offsite wellhead. So we'd ask for a Form 27 for the wellhead P&A cut and cap. And then the flow line abandonment could be combined on one Form 27. And we were asking for a separate one for the tank battery in this situation. And then next, this was what Greg was describing. They're all on the same location. You could wrap multiple wells, flow lines, and the production facility on a Form 27 in this case. And we're working hard to try to improve the functionality of the Form 27 when it gets updated. So, we would like to reduce the number of Form 27s required as much as operators would until we get those improvements made. If we can get them made, this is how we're asking the Form 27s to be submitted.
Great. Thank you, Greg and John, for that. Next question, just put that back down, is we have old flow line IDs listed on a scout card that have since been replaced by a flow line system ID. Will this be an issue when discussing the removal of these lines on a Form 27? Should we make mention of these old IDs on the submit tab, or will COGCC recognize these are no longer valid?
Yeah, I could address. So yeah, we'd appreciate any clarification you can provide on the Form 27, and you could include that on the submit tab. we realize there are individual facility IDs now for large flow line systems that have many flow line segments. And so, we would like to see a figure with the initial Form 27 that illustrates the actual flow line segment and the flow line path, because that helps us be able to effectively review, what kind of areas that flow line is running through. But to answer your question, yes, any clarification you could provide would be appreciated.
Great, thank you, John. And thank you for that question. Next question is for clarification, if a single flow line will be decommissioned but cannot be removed due to other flow lines within the same flow line trench being present and potential damage of those flow lines could occur, will a Form 27 for closure of the single decommissioned flow line be required?
Yes, so all flow line decommissioning or abandonment or closure, whatever you want to call it, requires a Form 27. And so even if it's being closed in place, you have to submit the Form 27. And the whole purpose of this is to document that there's no residual contamination along that flow line. So, we discussed this in the guidance document. If it's going to be closed in place, you're going to excavate at the ends. Let's say that it had a pressure test prior to closure. It showed integrity. So we don't think there were any leaks at the time of closure. Then you might only be excavating at two ends to daylight it, to properly drain it, contain the fluids properly, dispose of them properly, do some logging of the soil properties at the excavation. If you see any staining, you can perform some field screening, and then you submit that supplemental Form 27 with that information to verify that there were no impacts left or at that location. And so yes, a 27 for all flow line closure.
Great, thank you, John. And then it looks like, I remember Jane getting this next couple, or maybe Jane and Greg both did that one. And then the last one is not a question, it's just a kind of an answer to one of the other questions. So it looks like that is up to, or it looks like there's no more questions. Real quick though, I just wanted to let everybody know that on the email that I send to everybody, oh, why won't it move? There we go. This is the email that you should have all gotten recently. I just wanted to point out some of the links that we have here for your convenience. And so of course the agenda is going to be accessed online here, and then the video recording will be here. If you go to this is just our main YouTube page, which it would be, helpful maybe to, if you bookmarked this part, this is the videos tab, and whatever most recent thing that we've posted will be into the far left. So you can see our commission hearing got posted after our operator meeting, and then they're all in order after that. So that's a good resource for you there if you need to go back and review the meeting, or if you missed it for whatever reason. And then here is the form to submit your questions. If you click on that, it's just a hyperlink straight to the form that you can submit your questions on. So you can submit questions here at the beginning or end of this training session, or you can, if we're not doing trainings, you can go submit your question so that you don't forget it. And then the spreadsheet with the answers, there's a hyperlink to that as well. And that's here, so you can look up all your answers if you need to, and you can hit Control F to find, and then you can type in, let's see, like 912, and it'll pop up all the 912s that there are. So if you need help searching, that will be helpful to you. And then we also have a link to where all of the presentations and everything from all of these meetings will be. And you can see we've got the 9th up, and then we get these up as soon as possible, including the YouTubes. But if they don't get up as, within a day or two, just please assume we've had technical difficulties and we'll get it up within the week. If it's been longer than a week, go ahead and email me and let me know and I'll get on it. But within a week is pretty reasonable most of the time. So here's that. And then that last link there is going to be the link to the mission change guidance docs. And that's just a hyperlink straight to all of the mission change docs here. So hopefully that will be helpful to you guys when you're trying to find things on the website. Here's a couple of hyperlinks, and this is on the email that I send to you, which brings me to the next item, which is if you need to be on the operator email list, please email me and I will put that up as soon as I can get my other presentation up. Which one is it? There we go. And the next operator meeting is not today, it's next week. Let me just find that date real quick. It's going to be the 23rd. And then here's my email address down here if you need to email me to get on that operator email list. And then let's just see if there are any other questions. Thank you to the person who said that the links in the email are super helpful. I appreciate that. That's why we put them there, was to be helpful to you guys. So it looks like there's no other questions and I'm not having any private messages either. So I guess we're going to conclude this one. The next meeting is going to be on next Tuesday, February 23rd, and I'll send out that agenda on Thursday or Friday of this week. So otherwise, I hope everybody has a great week and take care.
Thanks,
Hannah.
Hannah. Thank you, Hannah.
Sure thing. Thank you, guys. Share and meeting for all.